Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation and thank you for coming today. One thing which is important in what Christian said is I also teach, so I tried to make this lecture also a kind of an explanation or a storytelling of how someone can graduate here in the US, work for a big firm and then open his own practice and work on this, which is very, very usual in Europe, but maybe not so much here in the US. And you'll see all the implication of that on one's career. I will just go on with everything that Christian Pongratz said right now because I have some more explanation about the place. In fact, the place we were briefly talked about by Christian was this red dot here. It's where Germany, Switzerland and France meet in one point that shares a common language, a common history. The reason I'm showing you this is I believe after looking at the work we do that it has a very strong connection to the place. The place is made of, when you zoom in, of 3 cities. It's this city Mulhouse, that's French side, Basel, which is the main city there, and Freiburg. Sorry about that. I mean, it's on. It will keep going like that. I have to control it. Freiburg in Breisgau, which is in Germany, and these 3 cities together, they make somehow 1 million people. It's a 1 million people city, and they share one common airport, which is here next to Basel, but on French ground. And it's a very, very unusual situation in Europe that cities from different countries, they share, train stations, airport, this kind of things. It's kind of unique. The history of this place is also quite particular. This is a view of Basel. For those of you who will travel to Europe, I recommend highly that you go there because it's probably the most, it's a small city that attracts a lot of international architects right now. And this city of Basel had a common history, as I said twice already, with Mulhouse, the nearby French city. They were founded approximately at the same time, and they share a common history of technical and cultural knowledge and practice. They were even once in a common alliance. So you have these 3 cities in Germany, France, and Switzerland that had some kind of an alliance, a defensive alliance, military alliance, but also cultural. Currently, the leading city of the place is Basel. I don't know what's going on here, but there are earthquakes in Basel too. And for real. A couple of years ago, engineers in Basel, they found a way to produce heat by digging in the earth 1 kilometer, sending water, and getting it back to have it warmed up. The fact is, it provoked big earthquakes. I mean, big in our way, it was like 5 on the Richter scale. But big enough so that this guy had to stop everything. It was a big catastrophe, in fact, and they got bankrupt and everything. Because in Switzerland, you can make your own experiment, but you have to pay for it afterwards. Anyway, the city of Basel now is really in the art business. It's one of the prominent places in the world. They launched something called Art Basel, which is also Art Miami. They have this Kunstmuseum that's the oldest public collection ever in the world. It was founded in the 16th century, and it was a very unusual thing. The Burgermeister, I would say, that's a German word, of course. The people of the city, they started buying arts in a public way, as back as the 16th century. And it's the origin, actually, of any kind of public collection in art. And there is also, in this place, a tradition for surface, for let's say, the working on the surface of buildings. This is, for instance, the city hall of Mulhouse. The City Hall of Basel looks exactly the same. In fact, it's a work of painting dating also from the 16th century. This also has an influence on the way people think around there. Then the two cities, they started evolving into super highly manufacturing places like Liverpool or Manchester at the same time, and they got this enormous heritage of this period of the industrial power. That's what the city of Mulhouse currently looks like. We have a lot of these gigantic places, post-industrial places. Some of them are reused, some of them are not yet. And it's a potential of, let's say, development in the future for this city. And there is, with this, all this technical knowledge and technical experimentation that was made in the 19th century that has a strong influence on how people think, how people represent things, how people work, especially in architecture. This is particularly strong in Mulhouse. Like, for instance, those are drawings that we use to experiment, to use in our projects, how the work with machines, the work with material, the work with color actually produce something that we can use in our architecture. I will talk about that later. And on the other side of this, so this was also, I'm jumping from one thing to the other, but this is the kind of craftsmanship that was created during the 19th century to imprint textiles and things. It was a high place, Mulhouse and Basel, for textile industry. That's how actually it created all this chemical industry also. And all those pieces, all these devices that were created in order to print, they look extremely nice, and they make us, I mean, we would like to use all this knowledge in our architecture, in the way we invent new machines, new way of working on facades and things like this. On the other side of the Rhine, in Basel, as we heard before, a lot of things happen. This is the Novartis campus that we heard before. This is the Rhine River. In this campus, you have Sanaha, Gehry worked here, Tadao Ando. This is dinner. You'll have very soon Herzog de Meuron. Almost every prominent European architect and even American architects are here present building things. I would really recommend to go see it if you have the opportunity. Now, this is a building by Dina and Dina, a very famous Basel office. And once again, I wanted to show this because there is this very simple form. This is something you might find interesting if you go there. It's a lot less form-looking and volume-looking architecture and volumetric search. It's much more looking into the surface of building, the skin, how you can give them a special expression by working on the material you use and how you use this material. This, for instance, is plates of glass of different colors, all assembled in a random way, and that's, I would say, a very typical example of what Basel currently produces as an architecture. Those are examples of Herzog de Meuron, and this is by Peter Zumthor, if you heard of him. He's also a Swiss architect, actually born in Basel too. That I just picked them because they represent very well this work on surfaces. This is the facade of the De Young Museum in San Francisco that was built by Herzog de Meuron. This is a very small factory in Mulhouse, built by Herzog de Meuron, a Basel firm. This is a train station by Herzog de Meuron, and you can see how this work with the skin of the material is obtained. After my study, I went working for these guys, Herzog de Meuron. So it might sound a bit odd. I don't know if you all know who they are. I think I have a couple of pictures of, yes, this is their main building. I mean, the one that made them from European known scale to international, really completely worldwide firm. They've built this Beijing stadium in 2008. I was there at that time. And I did spend actually 8 years of my life working for these guys, coming back from New York and settling back into the old area where I grew up, Mulhouse, Basel. And it was a very interesting time, of course. It was also a time where we developed a special way, or I participated in a very special approach of architecture, which works with a lot of model making. In fact, you may think it's quite normal to make models, because I've seen so many around. I saw a super nice workshop. In Europe currently, very few firms work with models. Very, very few. I would say in France it's one out of 50 or maybe 100. It's completely lost. People believe in 3D modeling and they completely forgot about material, about the sense of what you could touch, and also how big an influence it has in your relationship with a client and also within a working team. And this was a very, for me, extremely intense experiment with Herzog de Meuron. This is, for instance, just a couple of models that were done for a project in Beijing, just opposite the street from the Beijing Stadium. It was a movie theater. This is another gathering of models. We used to do this a lot when we started a presentation there, to show the people how wild the experimentation had been prior to obtain the right form. And this is also something, of course, I took into my own practice as one of the most important things to do. This is, by the way, the competition, a very interesting competition that was won by Morphosis, but not Morphosis, Tom Main himself, because I think now that's the way the firm should be called. That's what he said, at least. It's a 300 meters high tower in La Défense in Paris. So this is the kind of project I had actually under my supervision as an associate by Herzog de Meuron. Those were also other experiments. And there was also this tendency in working with the material, trying to experiment with it, trying to build up prototypes, one-to-one, real scale and everything. This is, for instance, some stone wall. We were trying to obtain some kind of a stone structure, and this would have been was done actually within the office, making firms coming and trying to experiment one-to-one like this, in order to obtain this kind of things, natural stone, and this was artificial stone that we were producing in-house. Okay, the projects that I worked on with Herzog de Meuron were a couple of them. I can show them to you. It's the Hamburg Philharmonic. I don't think this is known already here. It's coming big in Europe because it will be actually open to the public by the end of this year. And it's a completely crazy philharmonie plus hotel plus mall built on top of an old 19th century storage in the harbor of Hamburg. Another one was a tower in Paris. Another one, smaller, 200 meters, next to on the peripheric. And the third one was, one of the other ones was the Vitra house. It's one of the buildings that we evoked before. Vitra is this very famous furniture factory that has a sort of a campus outside of Basel, and they've built with Caesar, Gehry, Herzog de Meuron, Sana, Tada Wando also. So if you go there for one day, you see all these guys just in like 2 hours. They also have the first building ever made by Zaha Hadid. It was the first one she built. It's there. She was commissioned. And unfortunately, I can't really show you extensively work of Herzog de Meuron because it's not the purpose of today, and also because it's not my projects. I was an associate and not them. But this one, museum in Colmar, is a common project. We actually collaborate with them. My newborn office was the French counterpart of Herzog de Meuron in this competition, and we won it. Colmar is a city in the center of Alsace, so next to Mulhouse, not so far from Basel, and it's one of these super touristic place. It looks extremely nice, extremely Disneyland. And so in the middle of this, you have to implant a museum that has some really, let's say, it wants to be a high place in terms of culture, in terms of art, and in terms of architecture also. The museum is currently organized like this, around a cloister, and what the city gave, that's an old plan, that's the cloister here. It's located here in the city, sorry about that. And the city wanted to extend it, and they gave us this site to work with. And there is a channel that goes across the site, which for everyone at first sight, it made no sense to go anywhere down the earth because you would actually meet the water. But and you had to use this part here to kind of double the capacity of the museum. So what we proposed, this is the cloister here. What we proposed is actually to build on the other side of this little waterway, I don't know how you say this, un canal, that you know that? Well, to use what belonged to the city already. It was an old swimming pool built by the Germans because the place was actually ruled by the Germans for a couple of decades in the 20th century. And this was completely empty, and it was an available site to extend the museum. And the idea that was promoted was to really reorganize this into a second cloister with an inner courtyard such as this one, and link them with an underpass under the water. So that's the current situation, and it will be like that afterwards. So that's the old cloister, the new one, and underneath you have the underpass. Those were typical spaces that we wanted to really use in terms of architecture making. This was the old chapel of the cloister, in which you have the most famous painting called the Retable d'Issenheim. And the attempt was to reproduce a sort of similar volume on the other side and keep the old one of the swimming pool as also the pivoting part of the whole thing, and creating with this three space really a new museum that would work as a whole. Let me show you some pictures. Oops. So, and in the process, Jacques Herzog and Pierre de Meuron fell in love with this little shack here. They thought it was amazing. This is the cloister, and this is the place we were to do an extension. And they thought, we need something like this in the middle of the plaza that's facing the museum. So let's rebuild something like this next to the water. And that's how this idea came. Now, the extension's gonna look like a very austere volume like this, made out of bricks, with hardly visible cuts in there to get some light in it. And this little thing, the underpass goes here. And this is the old swimming pool that's completely turned into a new art collection. That's seen from the other side. This is the entrance. And we also did a very thorough work to reorganize completely the collections and trying to find an order in this collection. It's a museum that has any kind of centuries, any kind of pieces from not only art but also craftsmanship and things. So we had to find really a comprehensive way of walking into the museum and going from one L to the other. And the solution we found was to take the people up on this side with the oldest art, then go there, then go under and emerge here and have the 20th and 21st century art on the other side, like an opening to a new era for the museum. That's the famous painting I was mentioning before, and what we wanted the chapel to look like afterwards. That's gonna be the kind of exhibition space you will have in the new building. And the interaction, between the old and the new building, trying to gather these two pieces that's from 19th century, that's going to be contemporary, trying to mix them into an harmonious way. This is the way it's going to look like to go from one side to the other. That is currently not really known. In fact, this building will be only open to the public in 2 years. It's currently under construction. This is the old swimming pool, and that's the way it's going to look like afterwards. And it's going to look like with the art. Now, gathering all these things, we tried as our office to build up sort of a project architecture strategy. We're 8. So we work also a lot with models. What we do is trying to find a concept, trying to bring in either artistic or any kind of a conceptual idea to the project, trying to express it into volumes, into models, then also accept what is extremely important currently in Europe. I guess it's also over here, but trying to make up the energetical concept part of our architecture. Where we live, there is a tendency to build now zero consuming, buildings that consume no electricity at all, or no energy, or are self-producing their own energy. Where there is a tendency to go towards this, and at least by law, you have to create buildings that consumes less than 50 kilowatt per square meter per hour per year. In fact, it's a very low standard, and it's written. You have to do it. So unless you take this into your design at first, there's no way you can achieve it. You cannot build something and then put solar panels on top of it or a lot of insulation and things and think it will work. It doesn't work that way anymore. You have, for instance, here to create a wall that's going to take a maximum of solar energy or this kind of thing. You have really to take it into your architecture at first. This is the second concept. And then, of course, there is this material, this idea of working with the material itself, with the skin and the envelope of the project. This is something we really strongly believed in, that by giving this skin an expression, you give the building itself an expression. And this is achieved by working with the material itself, by perforating it, by looking for materials that maybe are unusual or unusually used, that were not maybe made for this, that in another use. For instance, these polycarbonate plates were never used as an elevation material, as a facade material. Anyway, I go on with this. Our first project was really, really downsizing compared to what I was working before, because the tower in Paris, for instance, was worth maybe, I think the budget was something around 400,000 million euros. And now we're going back to super small scale projects. This is when you leave a big firm in order to create your own practice. There is this tremendous gap that one has to absorb. And we started working on little firm incubators into this kind of building. Actually, those are projects that no one wants to do. So when you are fresh on the scene and you're eager to do work, they give you this kind of building and they say, okay, do something with it. So this is the exterior. We didn't change so much. But we had this process going, the one I described before, trying to build up models that we could talk with the people around. It would be a tool of exchanging with the users of the building and trying to really bring some intelligence into this very wild design that we had to work with. This is what the place looked like before, and this is what it looked like after. So it's kind of industrial looking. We brought in this idea of a conference room in the middle that would be made completely out of wood, and the rest would be extremely neutral. This is the first project of the office, and it helped us really building sort of a design strategy. I'll be quick on this. And this facade, this envelope work, on this project, it was really the early steps of it. What we did is we took a piece of this textile industry, a very well-known fabric of the place, Mulhouse. We worked on this, we transformed it into a sort of pattern, and we actually imprinted it into the panels that are cladded on the facade. That was our way on this project. It was really the first attempt of doing it. Then we had a chance to build a very unusual little office in 100 kilometers away from the place we work. It's a French and German offices. Actually, it's an association that manages everyone that works on both sides of the border. So they wanted, this is the site we were given, and this is the border. This is Germany, this is France. And this used to be the old custom house. It looked like this. And once again, people give you this and they say, do something. We don't want to demolish it. You have to absorb it and make a design out of it. And make it look like it's neither French nor German, and it has some kind of a signal. And it's like, ooh, okay. All these projects, by the way, and that's the good thing about this place, even if we don't have much money these days, those are competitions. You enter a process of competition, you apply, they select a few teams, and they give you some fee that in order to work for 1 or 2 months, and you can propose a design. One firm is chosen and builds. And out of 3-4 firms, they will take a young one that has not built. It's a very interesting process because if you start your own practice, that's the only way you will get a client, almost. So in any case, what we proposed is we proposed to build something that would go across the old custom and build some kind of a linkage between France and Germany. So once again, we worked a lot with models. We extended the building on the side and built something in front of the building that would be the signal that the client was expected. Here, the energetic, that's for basically the volumetric search, and then the energetical search was kind of really thorough. We wanted to use part of our building as an energetic device that would collect the solar energy by heating up. There is a glass wall here. This box here is made out of wood, and between the glass and the wood, the air gets so hot in summer and so cold in winter that we can use it using pumps, thermal pumps in the basement, that we can use it to refresh, to cool down the building or heat it up. So when we proposed this, people were like, oh, okay. But then the design we thought it could achieve would be something like that, a wooden box that is actually glazed and reflects and stuff. So we built this thing with this glazing and the solid wood at the back, and this is how it looks now. And it actually works pretty fine. It's the second summer people were in last year. It never overheats because the air is actually exhausted on top, and if it gets really too hot, it's pumped into the basement of the building. So it's like a protective part, and we use this hot air into the energetic system of the building. That's what it looks like now. And of course, what's nice about it is that it plays with the time of the day, and it's all, either it's really woody and it looks like wood, or it becomes kind of a lantern. The good thing also that we didn't think about that first, but people dislike a lot the way wood age. I don't know. I didn't see many wood buildings around here, but in our area, I mean, not outside, but in our area, there's plenty of wood building, but people tend to paint them and to repaint them every year. And when they don't do it, it becomes black, and people don't like it at all. And by doing this, we actually kept the wood completely untouched. Because it's protected by the glazing, 2-3 years after, it's got exactly the same color that the first day. This has turned completely gray, on the other side of the building, but the part, those are some interior spots, but the part that facing the street with this glazing has not changed at all. We also use a lot of wood structure, but solid, massive wood structure, not beams, but solid panels that are used as a concrete slab, and we use them as structural elements. We put them in place and leave them untouched as finished elements, such as this. This is the conference room of the place. That's the way it looks. Another project in which we tried to use a material that was not necessarily designed for it is, I call this a roadwork center. In fact, in our place we have a lot of snow, and in winter and summer there is a lot of people work on the roads. They have to plow everything, they have to do a lot of things. So in many places scattered in the area, you have this little center with a lot of big machines that are used by these guys. The site was really on the edge of a city, facing a natural landscape. And what we wanted to do is to give it a sense of enclosure. We thought about it as a farm, really. So we used the typical silhouette of farming places in this area in order to not only to protect the guys, but also to, of course, protect the people that work here, but also create a sense of courtyard with sort of a villa, a Roman villa, let's say. And also, of course, using the ventilation to, anyway, this is not important. The sense, and the other idea was to have two different conditions. One outside, very mineral, very buried into the landscape, and one inside that would be lit up, that would be open to the people, that would enable them to work any day of the year, any time. This is from the outside what it looks like. Very simple material, really down to earth. It's really into this natural landscape. And on the inside, it's completely different. It's this kind of things. It's made of polycarbonate and resin. And once the people lit it up, it becomes a very active courtyard with all these lights around. Like this. This has never been used actually before to make doors like that. So people were really scared that it would hold. But it's made of resin panels, which means that it can resist almost even a truck going in. We had to have approval by the states and everything for it. Inside it looks fairly plain and with very simple materials too. Another work we did is this biomedical research center in Strasbourg. Sorry for the spelling. It's a project that's not built yet. It's under construction. It's for the University of Strasbourg. So Strasbourg is actually 100 kilometers north of Basel in this very same area. We mentioned it, and that's also the place I teach. It's, let's say, a 500,000 people, 500,000 inhabitants city, and it's also a very nice university place, such as here. It's got 45,000 students, I believe. And this is a place that's going to be completely new with all the lab research in biomedical, in the biomedical field. It's organized, once again, in all these competitions now, we have limited freedom in terms of volumetric research, in fact, because you can do it, but you have to achieve tremendous performance, energetic performance. So the more compact you go, the better it is for you. And that's why buildings tend to be like this, organized around around an atrium to get maximal light inside, but also to have it as compact as possible. And then the game is really to make something out of it, to give it an expression. So this is what the cross-section looks like with this gigantic in or scale atrium with the light coming in from here, and also a view over the city with this big terrace, and this very plain looking building. We also worked on it, a lot of models. This is the atrium in the middle. There is also a very, very sophisticated energetic concept to it, that the wind goes in, and we use the atrium in the middle to actually for the cooling in the nighttime, and it works pretty well actually, according to our calculation. And now we wanted to give an expression to this volume that's really dull, and also we wanted to give it a double scale, a general scale, and also a scale when someone gets close to it, some kind of a human detailing scale. We wanted it also to work as an advertisement, some kind of signage also. So we went back to work of artists that are essential to us, such as Gerhard Richter or this guy Vic Muniz, who are working with dots and destructuring images. And we thought about using this kind of system that's, it's a louver system, in fact. So, but this louver system can also be fixed. It doesn't have to be manipulated. There's a firm in Italy, actually, that covers building with this. So we tried to work with one unique device, that's a blade like this, and cover the whole building with it, and work on a pattern that would really make a complete envelope. So there is a concrete structure, insulation on top, then these devices, and then we clad these blades on it, and we can close the whole thing, and it will look like a gigantic screen. Then we had to convince the people, because it was also a competition, that it made sense. In fact, it doesn't make sense at all, but I mean, why would you, okay, you could do it all pink if you want. What's the matter? But we thought it was good to have a message in this. So we took a very old, it's a biomedical research center. We took a very old mosaic work, Roman mosaic work, which represents the three founders of medicine. And it's in the middle of the medical school. And we actually worked a bit with it. We kind of destructured it, recolored it, and then applied it to the whole building envelope. And then we made a lot of experimentation, what it would look like if we use this stone or this stone. And finally we decided we picked one, which is this. And that's the way the building's going to look like now. It's got, I think, 45 different colors, and each blade has a number. And we go on construction right now. It's going to be a nightmare for these guys because they have to clad them independently. But nevertheless, it works. The system was actually tested because we just built a prototype for it to prove also the people of the medical school that it would work. And the funny thing is, when you tell a story like this, at first you think people will not connect to it. And in fact, what happens is the dean fell in love with the whole story. Thought, wow, this mosaic kind of thing. And he kept telling everyone about it. He made a paper, he told the newspapers about it. And that's how the project really got accepted. From one crazy idea that is an architectural kind of gesture. In fact, once you get your client convinced with it, it works for you. It convinces everyone else. That was very good. Another little project next to this one was a soccer club. It's actually, the site was extremely interesting because once again it's a small scale project, but we've been given this site which is next to the European Union, the seat of the European Union in Strasbourg. That's where it sits. That's the Assembly of European Union. So it's very small. It's like 500 square meters, so let's say less than 5,000 square feet. But it got a tremendous impact. Everyone comes there. So everyone knows the building by now. It's been only on for 6 months, but everyone knows where it is. In this building, we also had an energetic thing. I will not comment this too much. We also worked on a model, a lot of models. Our idea was to combine the two directions of the sites. There was the soccer fields were here, and the street is on the other side, and the building is like the pivoting point between these two directions. So we tried to have these two directions embedded in the building, and that's the way it looked, with a roof that was not parallel to the rest of the building. And by doing so, we created a very big terrace overlooking the soccer fields that was not part of the program, of the competition. That was what us architects, we gave as a plus to the building. This is something we always try to do, in fact, in competitions. We try to see what's necessary, what's absolutely you have to produce, and then something you give a little plus, something more you give to the building, another space, another. And that's the way it looks. So in this one, we had, once again, limited budget. We wanted to also make it a signal that would play also with the light. So we used perforated, very standard corrugated perforated metal that has lighting system in it, and that looks extremely different by daytime, nighttime. Inside it's very plain looking. Once again, it's all made of concrete. Even though we had a very big roof, we tried to have light going in through this kind of skylights. We have here a corridor that's facing, the street is on this side, and the corridor is also on one side with polycarbonate panels. So the life is seen from the outside. As soon as you have a bit of light in there, you see silhouettes of people going in and out. This is daytime, and once it's nighttime, once it's lit inside, you can see the people going through. We have very, very different appearance on the street. It's this. And from the soccer fields, it's completely open. And when the light changes, you have all this place. It's glazed on top of this thing, so the sun actually creates a lot of shadows, and the panels look like some kind of how do you call this in English? Sorry? Screen. Yeah, a screen. I was looking into the. Anyway, let's forget about this. But let's say a screen. Yes. And what was amazing, we did prototypes of this to see how much perforation you can have for it to be interesting. This is only perforated 23%. And as soon as you have light going through, it looks almost transparent as a screen. And what you have also, if you don't produce, if you don't make a prototype out of your idea, people don't believe in it, they don't want you to put it on site. So you really have to go through this whole process of selecting perforation, selected kind of corrugated, show them on site, maybe mount them on the wall, let light go through, and all this process. It's very, as an architect, I think this is things you have to do to convince your clients each time you do a building. So that's the way it looks like now. I'm finished with this one. A lot of pictures. But we loved it, so we put a lot of pictures. Amongst the 2-3 projects that we delivered this year, there is this one, which is a firm incubator in Versailles. Once again, it's got this story to it that you are given something that not so many firms would like to work with, and this is this. A very ugly old school from the 60s, and you have to turn it into something interesting because they want to attract people to work in there. So what we did is we reconsidered the whole thing from a larger scale, trying to give it a new organization to the whole site, a new entryway and everything. This is how we actually convinced the guy to give us the work, the mayor of the city. Then we investigated the whole building to see what could be actually kept out of it and what was the structure good for and what we could use. These were the stairwells, so some of them we kept, some of them we took out. We noticed that the structures, the spans were not so bad. We could do something with it. We proposed to reorganize a corridor way in the middle of the building instead of the way it was before. Before it was along the facade, so you could hardly use the whole width of the building. And we tried to play around with what it's a firm incubator, which means that you have all these guys that have no money but a super good idea. They want to start a company. They come here and they rent a space for like $100 a month, not more. And if they have some success, then they can have a second one, a third one. They can combine them together, and they can stay as long as their firm is developing, as their startup is developing. Once they're really a fully grown firm, they have to move to another place. That's the way it works. So we showed to the client that we could do it, what the brief was. We could actually pile up all these things in there, but it wasn't so interesting, that he had to create some kind of a link through this very dense building. And we proposed to create a sort of little piece that would be the unusual looking staircase and insert it into the building to create these meeting points, and also an ascent way of going up to a new meeting room that we propose to add on the roof. And this is how we actually, by doing this, we modified the brief. They accepted it, and they accepted also the way the building would look like with these staircases that this building is in Versailles. For those of you who know, Versailles was the seat of the royal power and everything, and whenever you say Versailles in France, you have all this fancy decoration and things, and it's all golden and whatever. So that was also some kind of a trick for us. We wanted to have this kind of thing, also use the red color, which was a dark red color, which is very, very extensively used in Versailles, and have kind of a contrast with all on the other side of the corridor with the offices that were super plain looking, very raw material. That's how the kind of models we built and we showed to the client, and this is how it looks like in the end. So it does have this kind of feature to it, and the offices are indeed very simple looking. This is also, I didn't show it, but it's also a very, very low consuming building. It's almost zero consuming actually. And we thought, once again, it would be extremely interesting to work on the envelope of this building, so we proposed to use a perforated metal, but this time not plain industrial material, but doing it the way we would like to do, give our own expression to it. So this was some kind of an early drawing when we started. We convinced the client at first that we would use some kind of shiny, golden-looking metal. In fact, we didn't use that. We changed it. We worked on a logo. The place the building is built is a place where the Montgolfier, the Frères Montgolfier, were two brothers. They invented the balloon. In fact, it's the place where it went up for the first time. So we thought it was a very nice image or sign to work with. And then all around it was a farmland, and it's got it was 3 nurseries actually all around the project, like just 50 years ago. So we combined these two things into a pattern to cover the whole building with it. In the same way, the old fabric were done in the area of Paris. There's a famous fabric called Toile de Jouy en Josas, and it's got this very regular looking pattern to it. And this we applied to the material by just perforating it, and so the building which looked like this now turned into something like this. And of course, what's nice about it, it's always the same story. It plays with the light. It's very dull and monotonous in the daytime, because we tried to match the color of the building and the color of the metal. And once it's lit from the inside, this red tone comes from it, and there is a totally different expression to the building. In daytime, it shines, and in night times, you can see its structure appearing, and you can see this red color once again. And that's how it looks like by night, during the night. We have a couple of projects coming, which will keep growing with this kind of experiments on the skin of the buildings. One is an office building in our place in Mulhouse, which will be made, the facade will be made out of metal blades, which will not look the same way from both sides. From one side they will be colored and you'll see a pattern. From the other side there will be just stainless steel. This is one coming project. Another project will be quite big for our scale of office apartment building in Strasbourg, which will have this very same metal work with another pattern that's going to be created especially for it. And now the good thing is, after having accepted all these commissions on small scale building and very modest things, we are given new things to work with. More interesting, not more interesting, they're all interesting, but larger scale, let's say. On an island in the middle of the Rhine, we've been commissioned to design, well, actually it was not, the competition was find a way to use this island. We are here on the German side, on the German bank, and there is a French bank on the other side, and there is this island in between this, and it has no use. It's completely empty. And what they want to do is to progressively build, have firms, have museums, have new functions coming into this. But they want to have a minimal impact on the ground. So we proposed this. We won this competition a few weeks ago, actually, and we will build a gigantic shelf, in fact, on the island that's 200 meters long, and every single office that will come, little by little, will be accommodated into this gigantic structure. And the structure will also act as a sort of expression device, as a screen. It will contain also, it has the capacity of expressing messages, or an artist can use it actually for a light structure. That's one of the biggest projects we will have to do. The second one is we've just won this competition to redo remodel this whole area in front of the airport of our city. That's the Mulhouse-Basel airport. So compared to an American one, it's pretty small. But in fact, that's big enough for us. But the parking lots are completely randomly organized. They have no comprehensive plan. So we've been commissioned to really put them into rationally organized buildings. And also, it's a good thing again to be on the border because it creates very interesting conditions to work with. This airport is in France, but it's linked to Switzerland by this road here. So it's like in the old time Berlin was like that. It was in the east part of it belonged to the Eastern Bloc, but it was linked to the Western world by a road, some kind of a protected road that was going all the way to Berlin. And I'm not comparing, of course, but there are some things like this between France and Switzerland. But this road is actually like the Berlin road. It's connected it directly to the mainland. And what it creates as a condition is this piece of land here is in fact Swiss. It's under Swiss law, but it's on French ground. So it's very cheap land because Switzerland is really expensive and France is not. So it's both. It's attractive because it's cheap and because it's linked to Switzerland. So we expect a large-scale development into this. We have like 120,000 square meters, so that's going to be. I'll let you translate this in square feet. Sorry? All right, 1,200,000 square feet of offices to be created here. And that's going to be our main project for the next 2-3 years, I think. Yes, that's it. Actually, I could either maybe discuss the matter with you, answer some questions, or project some more, but I think it's enough talking for today, maybe.
Question. It seems like, well, at least in Herzog de Meuron's work, they begin when they first started architecture, I guess in this very simplified form. And then you talked about earlier how they conceptually was branched out to these really radical forms.
Yeah.
And it seems like now their architecture is somewhere caught between the two, where it seems like they start with these really radical forms and they ground them through these almost Euclidean geometries. How do you go about navigating that?
It's actually exactly the case. We were discussing this before. Jacques Herzog always said that if he worked on, imprinted material and boxes, and very simple looking buildings and the expression of the facade, it's because he didn't have the money to go wild before. But in fact, I don't think it's completely true. It's because they were attracted to this. There is a whole school really in Switzerland which works with the expression of the material. With even if it's in concrete, they dig it, they make something interesting out of it. So they did this, very plain looking buildings at first. Then they evolved in the year, let's say 2000. They went completely wild, experimenting with all different forms. You have beams going in different directions. The De Young Museum is somehow some kind of experiment, but you have wilder project. And then lately, I would say for 4 or 5 years, they came back to very simple form. The Parish Museum, which was just delivered in Long Island, if you have seen it, is very plain looking roof, traditional roof. And it's more, again, the material, what it looks like, the way it plays with light and everything, it's more this that becomes important again. There was some kind of apogee to this work with, for instance, the Dominus winery, and this kind of plain looking buildings with a super strong expression. But they thought at that time that they needed more. And actually, they were competing with Rem Koolhaas a lot. I lived a very interesting experiment in the office where we teamed up with OMA in order to build an hotel in New York City, in Astor Place. And so HDM and OMA made a common team, and there was such a competition to come up with the craziest design. You know? and then they, because at that time it was 2000, everything was possible. Then a lot of projects went down. 2001, you know, everything stopped somehow. And they had to think again, what is the essence of our architecture? And they went back to something that's a bit more radical. It's playing with forms a bit more than at the beginning. But it goes back really to typical forms. If you look at Vitra and these things, it has some kind of reminiscence to it. You know, you go there, you look at things, it makes you think about things that you've seen when you were a kid, or very generic forms and things like this. Nope. Any of you trying to go to Europe for an internship or things like this? No, you're not interested in this?
Why did you decide to start your own office after working for like 8 years in one firm?
Because we were 400 employees at Herzog de Meuron in a very pyramidal structure, such as the one you know in HOK, all these big firms. You had partners and associates and blah blah. And in the end, what you do, my work at the end was selecting people, firing people, making design reviews, meeting clients, taking planes to go anywhere. I mean, it had nothing to do really with architecture at a certain point. So some people love it, and when they reach this point, they think, okay, now I'm a manager, that's my life. Me, personally, I wanted to work on the object, the architecture. And also, it's something you can do only, I mean, there are a few occasions you can do this in your life. I was turning 40, and I thought, you know, if I don't do this now, it's gonna be over. And I tried to do it. Now, maybe I will go back there. You never know. But it doesn't look that way.
So did you start your firm with a partner, or did you just go off on your own and find individuals to work with?
All the partners I had selected, they did something else. So I was by myself. No, but it's actually a joke, but it's the way it is. The life made it so that the 2-3 people that I met, I could really start a firm with. One was in Singapore, one is in New York. I mean, and I never found really someone, because you have to have a very strong relationship. All my friends who started companies, I mean, half of them, at least half of the firms, they've disappeared or they separated, or so. But of course, finding a partner is safer, because when you are by yourself, you know, hopefully the people I work with, they work with me since the very first day. So I've been working with them for now 5 years. I can leave my office, leave the key to them, and they work on the projects. And I haven't been in the office for 10 days now, and I'm not so worried. But though I just looked at my mails, and there are like 200 mails I have to go through. But yeah, a partnership seems to be kind of logical. I would recommend it if you find someone. Yeah.
Guillaume, how important was in your career to be out of Europe and for our students to be out of US?
Yes, that's a good question. In fact, when I was finished with school, personally, I started working in Europe, not too far from where I was educated, and I found it extremely boring. And I thought, if my life is like that, I will go to another field. That's not exactly what I wanted to do. And then one way to open, you know, new horizons was to go study abroad. So I went to Pratt Institute in New York City. I could have gone anywhere else, actually. I thought it's not just go to the US or you going to Europe. I think probably many people would now go to China or to Eastern world. But the point is trying to open doors, do not stay in your own environment and just see what you've been used to see. And for instance, the way things work around here is extremely different from my place. I mean, seen from India, we all look alike. We're kind of Anglo-European, whatever world, Western world. But in fact, the way this city is organized compared to my city is so different. It's just another world. And I think for you, it's extremely important to go see it. Europe is a good place because for this, because it has completely different ways of looking at things, looking at transportation, energy, education. Everything is different. It's about the same, but when you go in detail, you will pick differences that will make probably your life and your architecture very different too. But yeah.
I was very happy that you know the project with the border station.
Yes.
I was happy you put the modern box on the German side.
We had a lot of complaints from the Germans. They said there was not enough window on their side. And they were saying, no, actually we had a big opening and one German official said it looked like a bunker. And fortunately the slots were were horizontal and not vertical, otherwise it would be exactly the same. I was so ashamed. I mean, it was a wooden bunker, that's a concept.
Did you have to follow, since it's on the border, like different local codes?
Yes, actually both, because it's really on the so we get the two codes. And that's how I discovered that the German ones were really much better to work with than the French ones. The French is a mess. The German, at least, you know, it's a bit organized, as always.
So when I was looking at the Versailles project, one thing that resonated with me is the stair, more so because Herzog de Meuron.
The Unterlinden one?
To the stair.
The Unterlinden Museum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what kind of, I guess, vocabulary or questions have you learned from them or that you use now to actually approach the stair? Because they're very articulate in the way they're actually created.
Well, absolutely. Not so many people talk about it, but in every single Herzog de Meuron project there is a very interesting stairwell. It's always the main point of attraction, or in Duisburg, even not so well-known projects have this. Well, to me, the stair is not, well, once again, you have also to rediscover the importance of a stair into a project. In this, when I was showing this office building in Mulhouse, I don't want to go back to this illustration, but we wanted to have an open staircase in the middle. Of course, it's not efficient at all, because for code reasons, you have to have them enclosed. So if you add one, it's going to be just lost space, at least for the developer. But for us, I mean, for me, it's essential. Because if a company decides to buy two or to rent two stories, for me it's quite normal that people would use the stairwell to go from one to the other. So you have to make them attractive, interesting, naturally lit, all this. And I completely agree with this. This is something that it's a center part of architecture that should really be taken into consideration at first. The staircase here, for instance, is in the rear. It could be as a monumental piece in the middle, and it would help the building working, for sure. I agree. All right.